Now, for the quick vote question of the week, we gave you several options. Now, I want you to know that we usually pick these questions from the many questions that you send to us. So we're not creating them. You actually are creating them. We just select them and have you vote on them. Now, the four of them here. Number one, the age of accountability. You didn't choose that one. Is circumcision for today. That wasn't too impressive to you. And then was the evil spirit sent to trouble King Saul in 1 Samuel 16 from God? You didn't choose that either. You chose spiritual significance of a deja vu experience. Now, the term deja vu is a French term meaning already seen. It describes the feeling of having already experienced a situation previously. Some say it's an experience that comes through the gift of prophecy. Could a deja vu experience be the result of God revealing certain things to a person before the event occurred? Well, none of those last two suggestions make sense, because the deja vu experience really is backward looking than forward looking. You have the feeling that something that's going on, or there's something that you're seeing, you've experienced it before or you've seen it before. It's always backward looking. It's like, oh, I saw it before. It doesn't project into the future, and usually terminates without a connection. So you're unable to trace what's going to happen next from the picture that you got from what you thought you had seen before. As a result of that disconnection with a future prediction, it falls off what we will call prophecy or revelation from God at the point that it becomes deja vu. All right. I'll just give you a little explanation on this, because all over the world, people experience this. Whether they're Christians, Muslims, Shintoists, it's got nothing to do with religion. It's got to do with being a human person. And it's experienced anywhere in the world. You would find that at least 7 of every 10 people you talk to have had such an experience. Now, the others may have had it, but are not quite sure what you're talking about at the moment. Later on, they sit down and think through it, and they realize they probably have had that experience. Now, it's not an experience you have every week, maybe once or twice in a year, sometimes once in 2-3 years, sometimes a little more frequent than that. Depends on different individuals and certain factors, some things I'll mention to you now. First, I did talk about dreams some time ago. You can check the archives or the video. Somebody had asked a question about dreams, and I tried to give you some Bible explanation on dreams. And in our definition of those dreams, we did say that a dream is an activity of the human spirit that usually takes place in the sleep mode of the human body's senses and the mind, which means the dream often occurs when the body's senses are sleeping and the mind is inactive. But then I said it's an activity of the spirit. And then the two kinds of such activities. The first one is what we generally call the imaginative activity of the human spirit. Because the human spirit has what is known as an inner mind. An inner mind. Because, the human spirit is referred to by Peter the Apostle as the hidden man of the heart. He is not known to the outward. Paul calls him the inward man, and there is an outward man. The outward man is the body that you see, the body and the senses. But the inward man is that human spirit. And that human spirit has an inner mind. So the Bible talks about the mind of the spirit. See? So, when you are sleeping and dreaming, sometimes depending on which of these two activities may be taking place, the human spirit can have imaginations. Now, these imaginations are quite broad in the scope. What we mean is to say that some of those so-called imaginations can be visions. Sometimes they are images of the present, of the past, or even of the future. And those images come to the imagination of that human spirit in the sleep mode of the body, senses, and the mind. Now, the second part of the activities is the actual encounter of the human spirit, where that human spirit encounters other spirits, including the Spirit of God, or angels, or devils. And the Bible has records of all of this. Now, a deja vu experience actually is a result of some of those images that the human spirit gets, whether of the past, of the present, or of the future, in that sleep mode. Often, you know, a lot of times you dream when you sleep, but you don't remember every dream when you sleep. You just have a dream, and when you get up, it's all gone. You may remember a thing or two, but you can't tie the ends. Some of the times you have a dream that you just don't forget. See, the whole thing remains in your mind. Sometimes because of the fear it brought to you, or it depends on the impact. And then especially if it's from God, you just know it. You don't forget it, because God's a master communicator, and he gives that thing to you strong. Now, that doesn't mean you can't forget it. You could. You could, but you would know there was something that was so important and you want it back. Like Nebuchadnezzar, who had a dream and forgot the dream. But he knew that the dream was so important. He wanted to know that dream. He wanted the interpretation of the dream. And called all the wise men, and they couldn't get it. And finally, Daniel was called in, and Daniel gave him the dream. And they said, yes, that's my dream. That's my dream. And then Daniel also gave him the interpretation of the dream. See? So sometimes you may forget, but even when you forget, you know that this was something that was so important to you. And it can come back to you through the agency of God's Spirit. But now those images, whether of the past, the present, or the future, that come to the human spirit, are what we have. In our minds, just in that inner mind, we have that picture, but because of the disconnection, we don't talk about them because, didn't mean anything. Then later on in life, days later, weeks later, months later, even years later, you find yourself in that very situation, and it connects with something you believe you saw. You have this feeling you saw it before, or you experienced it before, but you are unable to connect it to the past or to the future. Unable to connect it. And because you're unable to connect it, it can't be prophecy. And that's why you're unable to say what's going to happen next, even though you remember that this, and this, you've seen it before. You're unable to connect it to the future to say, now, this is going to happen next. Reason because it was not connected for you at that time when you got it. See, but those are those images of the Spirit. Now, it's important for you to know, I said they're images of the past, the present, or the future. Some of us, now this happens to everybody because we're human spirits. I want you to remember that. We're primarily human spirits. A man, any human being is a spirit, primarily. And then he has a soul, and he has a body, and he lives in his body. So it will happen to anybody. But the human being has the nature of God. And because he has that, he was made in the image and likeness of God, which means he was made to look like God and to function like God. And so he has the capacity, once in a while, to have images of the past, images of the present that may not be within his immediate environment. He may not even be involved in it. And then he can also hold images of the future. He has the ability. And we have these abilities developed in us to different degrees. Some have developed these abilities so much that you would think that they were prophets. And they may not even be prophets. Also in the Bible. There was a man named Ahithophel in the Bible, and we're told in the days of David that the man was so smart, he was so wise, he could give any counsel, and that it was so high with him, so refined, that when someone heard from the man Ahithophel, they thought they heard from God. His counsel in those days was as good as if you heard from God. That's what they thought. He was so smart. So people have developed these abilities to different degrees. And that's actually what happens with you when you have what is known as a deja vu experience. It's just another way of us realizing that we're human spirits indeed. Well, the question was the spiritual significance, and that's what I just talked to you about. And there's so much more we could talk about this. And this was just to help you understand the source of it and how it works.